That metal on metal. It's still really dry. It sounds like the entire side of your car is getting.
Oh, yeah.
let's start with the formalities here. Of course, this is officially a meeting of the Clear Creek Board of County Commissioners. No action is on the agenda. This is really our interjurisdictional, I've been calling this our interjurisdictional fire department meeting. The first thing on the agenda, as per usual, is public comment. So if you're a member of the public and you wish to weigh in on this, now is your time. Anybody here for public comment? Sir, please, yeah, from right there is fine.
Is good?
Yep, please just state your name, generally where you live. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Got it. My name is Tom Harvey. I live in Georgetown on Silver Cloud Circle. I owe it to our citizens to let them know where I come down on this big fire authority hullabaloo, if you will. And especially so if I want them to give me their vote for county commission. The good thing about only having 3 minutes is you got to cut to the chase. So let me do just that. Hence, I have it written down. I've done deep research on this matter. And I've determined to be much to do over not too much. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it ain't broke. Essentially, it's a contrived power play and money grab, if you will, by the county over the fire authority. So what is the current status? Our fire department performs well. We are well protected. The board of directors of the fire authority functions well. The chief is doing quite a good job. Working relationships with the 4 municipalities is healthy. The major weakness is the relationship between the fire authority and the county. Frayed relations with the county is not unique to this case. Obviously, there's been serious contention in this group, serious contention. The biggest problem, of course, is funding. That's one of the biggest deals. The county paid for the big CIT report. It's an analysis. It's not a strategic plan. It's an analysis. It has value. There's some good things in it. There's a lot of, you need to deal with the good stuff, with the valuable stuff and move on. I think they veered out of their lane when they started getting into governance, Title 32 versus IGA versus special district, whatever. I don't think they had much expertise there. For certain, the CIT report should not be hanging over the neck of the fire department like a sword of Damocles, keeping them from fulfilling their duties. So now what? It's pretty easy. 4 municipalities should hammer out their final modifications and sign the IGA and then with the ESD as well, and move on. Extended for the appropriate number of years. And after the new BOCC is seated in January, attack the funding with a high priority and leave the governance till a future date, maybe the 12th of never. That's it from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Came in at 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
First time I've ever done that, George.
Just one clarification of fact that I think is important is that Mission CIT was selected, just for the public. Mission CIT was selected by a team that included the municipalities, and looking at governance was part of their scope of work. I just think that's an important statement of fact. Any other public comment? Okay. So let's get into it, shall we? What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it to our facilitator.
Thanks. Do you need it to like a,
Oh, should we do introductions? We
Well-
usually do.
or don't you normally just do like roll call? We don't have to. Okay.
Normally we run around the room.
Let's go around there. We'll do introductions. I'll start. I'm George Marlin. I'm a Clear Creek County Commissioner from the Idaho Springs District.
I am Peter Lichtman. I'm the county attorney for Clear Creek County.
I'm Lynette Kelsey. I'm the police judge for Georgetown.
Jeanette Peel, Town Administrator for Empire.
Brian Bosshart, County Manager.
Rick Krugling, Town Administrator for Georgetown.
Andy Marsh, Idaho Springs City Village.
John Curtis, Idaho Springs.
Chuck Harmon, Mayor, Idaho Springs.
Aaron Crawley, EMS Director, Clear Creek EMS.
Jeremy Jones, Cricket Fire Authority.
Kelly Babian, Fire Chief.
Mitch Houston, Commissioner from the East End.
Randy Wheelock, Commissioner from the West.
Laura Hickey, facilitator.
I introduced myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Harvey and
Cindy
Jones.
Right, thanks. So we are getting started tonight by confirming what IGA modifications this group wants to work through to get something signed. Time is of the essence. We all know that, to get an IGA signed and renewed ahead of the end of the year, but really, you know, that comes around fast. We're almost to September here. Once we agree to those modifications, we will have an update on the community survey, take a quick break, and then create an action plan and a work back and a schedule together to identify what information you need to make any modifications, how that might be informed, and really schedule it out so we make our way to a signed IGA. So the last time we convened was July 24th, and we had a really great discussion, help of Jeremy's push to get out of the parking lot. That's an analogy that Jonathan could not remember for the life of him, but I do. And so 3 things, when we ended that meeting, we heard 3 suggested modifications. Or 3 topics to really hone in on to get to a signed IGA. First was board representation, second was funding, and last was exploration of a Title 32 special district. So what we need to decide is, and I think there was expression of some that want to just sign the IGA today, but there are some who desire modifications before signing the IGA, and our goal here is consensus. So we want to work out how we can meet in the middle there, or what these deal breakers are, and how we can get to a signed IGA, because that's in the interest of everyone. So that being said, I just want to circle back to those suggested modifications and also say anything else to add to the list. So in order to sign an IGA, is a modified board required amongst this group? Is there desire for a modified representation on the board?
Can you describe what that modification is?
I think the suggestion was expanding representation for Empire and Silver Plume.
I
Actually,
don't think that.
Other,
mm,
no.
I thought it was for other underrepresented areas.
Like unincorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Areas like St. Mary's,
Mhm.
give that the high density unincorporated areas, and that's why I thought we needed to clarify what that meant before we
Okay.
said whether we support it or not.
Is that of interest? Is that a deal breaker? If that is not included? Or will the IGA be unsignable? Yeah.
I hate to frame it like that. There's no universe in which I wouldn't sign an IGA to have a fire department.
Yes.
So I really don't want to frame it like that, but yes, I believe that we need to make the population-based representation more equal, approach something that's more equal.
And I would agree, it's fairer.
I'm not suggesting we need 1 representative per 150 people, right? That would be a really big board. But I do think the unincorporated area needs more representation.
Hearing some support, I also saw some, no, we don't need that. Is it from the other end, a deal breaker to include an expansion for that representation of more densely populated unincorporated areas?
Empire's okay with that. We don't mind seeing more people included on the board. We're happy with our representation. So if there's identifiable areas that we want to add numbers to represent, we have no problem with that.
Georgetown, I think, would be in favor of that as well.
Is it a given? Sorry, I should raise my hand. Is it a given? And I think it should be. I'll just say that the representative of that area should, and it seems like it's a no-brainer, but it should come from that area if we're doing it in order to see that area that's more dense. I mean, we have some areas, some in the unincorporated area, we have some population densities that are similar to the size of our towns. Doing that to make sure that they had better representation. So I'm just thinking as a technicality, maybe that's getting too far into the weeds, but.
I was gonna say, great question for the latter part of the later this meeting, but I will note there. I know what that means. But what I'm hearing is, generally speaking, it's a modification. Explore and continue. Continue it. Okay. The discussion of funding is a part of every IGA renewal. You have in the IGA how you determine funding for the next cycle based on mill levies and county assessing. That the question here is, do you want to figure out modifications further than what's already outlined in the IGA?
Can I point something out?
Sure, Kelly.
A broken record. The current IGA can be extended for 2 years without any modifications. It just takes signatures.
Yes.
Modified one is gonna take some discussion and lots of meetings based on history of past IGA renewals. And need to spend some time looking at the underrepresented areas that are out there and what those look like and where they're at. I think there's 3 of them for sure. There's Blue Valley area, there's Saddleback area. And then there's St. Mary's.
Maybe DLD.
Yeah, could probably tie that into Mill Creek and. So there, you know, to look at those demographics and who you're gonna get for, if you're gonna get any activity for board representation and how much do you need to cover those and are they really underrepresented? Are they not getting what they need? You know, I could argue that the DLD area is getting real good representation because our main office is there. Where we've been responding out of, so.
I hear you, and that time is of the essence. What I just want to say is these questions that you have are exactly what I want to record as questions that would be needed to answer. You would need to answer in order to make that modification. So we can come back to, this is what modifications are we suggesting? What would we need to get? The next part of the meeting is what would we need to get there?
Yep.
And then by the end of this meeting, we want to have this action plan of what modifications are we making and how are we getting there? So thank you, and also please hold on to those questions for later. Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at it from different angle. So when we negotiated the existing IGA, I don't remember how far out it gave us more comfort in funding. If the funding actually came to the level that we set as a maximum mill. Do you remember the
current one allows for up to 10 mil equivalent,
right
and it's a 2-year extension.
term? Correct, but on, you know, projected expense versus revenue, how far out did it help us stay better afloat? Do you remember?
But it doesn't, we're gonna need more funding,
Okay, so it didn't actually adequately bring us back into a we're fine, no need to worry. Okay. And I think for that,
Level of deficit spending
okay,
with the increase, when the municipalities agreed to increase. So like when Idaho Springs increased and when you guys increased, when Empire increased, it reduced the amount of deficit spending necessary to maintain operations. But we're still deficit spending, so
okay.
Is it
shortens that time.
another accurate way to say it, that it helped fund and staff that we added this year?
Yeah, it helped, and that's the other thing, between the time the IGA negotiations occurred and today, we've also made staffing changes and service delivery changes that also added expense. So that also adjusted that 2029, 2028, shortened that time period before the funding issue is probably, we fall off the cliff, basically fiscal
Right.
at that point. So between the two of them, we're sitting in a situation right now that we need to figure out funding and by January of 2026, we need to have something figured out and hopefully in place.
Okay.
It's kind of where we're at, if that answers your question.
Well, yes, and it, from where I'm standing, I think because what we already have doesn't bring us out of the hole.
Right.
And we're still getting closer to a cliff. I think we do need to discuss it. We may not be able to modify it to actually bring about that result, but I think discussion about modifying it is valuable.
Modification of the IGA that
Yeah,
puts a definition, meets that January 2026. So I'm hearing, yes, let's keep this as a modification to explore and address. Okay, great. And the last one that I heard last time was agreement to explore a Title 32 special district as part of this discussion of funding options and governance options. So I think in the IGA, what this would look like is kind of similar to that. It would be a timeline of when do we want an answer or enough information to be able to answer that question. But what I want to ask the group here is that of interest to include? Do you want to keep exploring the Title 32 special district?
I do want to keep exploring it, but I'm not comfortable with tying it into the IGA. I think it's probably the next logical step because it does improve funding options. We're all aware of that. I think it complicates the IGA by throwing it in there as
But
part of,
agreement to explore complicates the IGA.
I'm not sure that it needs to be part of the IGA in order for us to be committed to continuing to explore it.
So just for clarification, it's in there now. It says the authority shall periodically investigate other organizational models from providing regional fire emergency services, including organizing a fire protection district under Article 2 of Title 32 CRS. So it's in there. So the
Sufficient.
solution is changing it out periodically and saying we'll investigate as part of the IGA is maybe the solution. It's literally one line. It's always been in the IGA.
But more complicated than that, I'm not really crazy about.
I agree, but I think it's,
Yes,
for this conversation, it might be as simple as taking out periodically and says, and everybody agrees that we will investigate. And to whatever that turns out to look like, and within the IGA, does that seem reasonable?
I mean, we would be for that.
How would people feel about targeting a date to having completed that analysis?
Within the next. Within the.
Yes, as we're
The IGA,
discussing
yeah.
modifications.
Yeah.
Coming up with a date that people think is reasonable, but then we can turn around and hold the board accountable. You know, it's been in there before, it's been investigated before. Maybe it's time to finish that process.
I appreciate that point. It's just something I kind of was curious about myself is how do you hold yourself accountable to ending the exploration and making a decision together?
And I mean, I would like to add to that, you know, like what's the outcome? And I think, I don't think we have to get super complicated, but I think if we say, you know, the outcome of the exploration would be a written report about the conclusion.
Mhm.
And we should also discuss who's going to conduct that analysis, right? Are we asking the fire authority board to do that? I might prefer that it be the interjurisdictional team that we've put together. Given that it's the municipalities and the county government that would be ultimately approving that service plan. So those are some things that I think some detail that I would hope we could agree to. I don't want to waste the effort we've put over the last 6 months. Really value everybody's time. And I think we have a much better understanding of our fire department and its needs and the organizational structures, and we shouldn't lose that.
Lynette, I want to say, you voiced the concern of getting these into those kinds of details in the IGA. Do you have any kind of? You maintain.
I prefer that we just work towards it. To me, it seems like it unnecessarily overcomplicates the negotiations that need to happen more immediately. We all know that the funding that the IGA is capable of and the fire authority is capable of under the current governance limitations we're going to hit a wall, Cliff. So we're going to need to head in that direction. At this point, I don't know that while we're negotiating the two more important factors, modifications, I don't know that we actually need to bring in that third one.
So I'm hearing generally there's a priority to figure out these.
Yeah.
And an interest to keep figuring this out. And you don't want this to get in the way of either of these.
Prefer not.
Yes. Okay, what is it? Does anybody else share that concern? An agreement to explore the Title 32 special district getting in the way of the discussions of funding and any sort of board representation in a way that like holds up a renewal of the IGA?
Don't we need to figure the other two items out before you sign? And so then you have a signed agreement and then you get working on the analysis of right? So I don't think it really would hold us up because we would have to do the other work first, get everyone around this table to sign it. Then you start doing your analysis of the Title 32. So I don't think it really gets in the way.
Well, if you start doing analysis of it in the midst of your discussions on the other two modifications, in my view, it kind of does.
My point is though, you can't start the analysis until you've got a signed IGA. So the other two things got to get decided first.
Well,
You know, I think I
why
understand.
are we putting that into, I mean, you're presenting it like it's a part of the modifications to our IGA, and I'm trying to separate because
So what the suggested modification is similar to what was already described, putting a date to say, here's some accountability of when we want a report about this exploration. But not doing the exploration before you sign the IGA. Does that make sense? Similar to how there was an agreement to do the emission CIT report, but the CIT report didn't occur until into the IGA period. That's what this suggested modification is. Does that make sense?
it does. It does. I kind of prefer to, work on the two more important ones and leave the other one for later, but I'm not,
I have a question, and I love the discussion. I think this is awesome. The question I would have on answering your question about should we put a date on this? I think in my mind, I would want to know the big that we need to be aware of. Like if we were to say, we're really going to seriously consider a Title 32 and the funding so that if we have to put this on a ballot measure, that should drive the dates so that we don't miss that.
Yes.
No, like, so I would say if we're going to shoot for June, I'm just speculating, then,
Takes about a year to 18 months to put together the district to put it on the ballot.
okay, so then we have all
But
year.
it takes that amount of time to do all the legal work and all the preparation and everything to set up the district and to get the ballot measures written and get it on the ballot. So anywhere from 12 to 18 months.
Just to clarify, I don't think anybody's talking about a date that a Title 32 has to be in place.
No, I don't think so, but if
But
you're
that's-
asking about
yes.
dates
Yes,
and for consideration, just know that if you say, we want to do this, it's not going to happen that same year on that November ballot. That would be really, really hard to do.
right.
It takes another year to get it set up. Or
Well, that's why I think this is important, kind of like, let's have realistic expectations. And then a suggestion would be we spend next year at a certain point where we know we have to kind of get to the points where in order to put this on the ballot, that if this is a serious measure from us, we have to have a checkpoint then of saying it. We have to have it by this point so that we'll have a determination. That was the whole discussion. I appreciate giving a more of a realistic timeline.
The thing that I think I can live with is, I agree, we need to talk about representation and funding first. And maybe I'm overly optimistic. Sometimes I am. But maybe what I can offer to do is think about what a Title 32 process might look like and bring something that's, sort of developed and hopefully reasonable so that we don't have to sort of build it from whole cloth in this setting.
Right. Yeah, I was just gonna say that with all due respect, that we put stuff on the ballot. And Title 32, of course, has a lot of legalities that are attached to it. And part of that is the negotiations of what it's gonna look like and what its makeup is. And I would suggest that the study that we were talking about doing, an analysis or kumbaya collaboration or whatever we title it, is where we would flush out a lot of those details, and that would be part of that 12 to 18 months. But that quite honestly, when we're looking, even the Front Range Passenger Rail District would be the largest taxing district in the history of the state. And they last year set a deadline of April of this year to decide whether to go to the ballot this year. And believed it was possible if they could. And that's a lot bigger lift than this one would be. And I agree with Judge Jones that you got to think well ahead of it. But if we were to do the kind of work that allowed us to agree on what the makeup would be and what it would be drawn like, what the districts, for example, if we knew what the district, what the different districts within the Title 32 district would be for representation on the board, if we had some of those details worked out, then that would be part of what we needed to get done, and we could make a decision probably more like March or April. I know some people have said June in the past and stuff like that, but it's got to be sooner than that. April's really a last second drop dead. You can't really go later than April and put the campaign together.
well, the problem I see with setting an April date is my board's going to shift.
Yeah.
Beginning of April, and so you've got new people,
Yeah.
that either,
That's true for pretty much all elected positions. There's going to be different people.
sure.
And they need to come on board and be socialized to it.
What I'm not hearing is a lack of interest in continuing to discuss the special district option. So how that fits into the IGA modifications in order to sign, we can work those out, but I think for the purposes of just like getting past this first point of the meeting, I'm gonna say we're gonna continue to explore special district. Is that agreeable? Sure.
I just want to make sure I'm clear
Yes.
because I agree with what I'm hearing. That it's almost like if we can finish our modifications and worry about those things, then I think we're all welcome to discuss those things. But
Yes.
they should not be putting first. You know, like if we're starting to discuss Title 32 when we still haven't done the modifications, it feels like we're going backwards.
No.
Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify. It's
That
like,
would not be the case.
it's welcome discussion, but with the other two priorities.
Yes.
Yes.
So the details of these need to be worked out before you sign the IGA. This is very high level agreement of let's explore this and have, by the time we need to sign another IGA, have a clearer answer of the question we've been asking all along of should this structure change to meet the funding needs? Does that resonate? Does that clarify a little bit, Lynette? I totally hear you don't want this to get in the way of these.
Bingo.
Yes.
That's my,
And I think right now we're kind of letting this get in the way of these and I'd like to just
We are.
keep going.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great.
The other two can't have a signed IDA. You don't get it.
I think the next thing on the agenda is actually a survey update. I don't, or is there? Right, update on community survey. I think there was a meeting today, like the subgroup for the community survey. Do we want to? Know it?
Unless, I mean, do anybody want to take for a break?
Yeah,
This is what came out.
yeah.
A person to, do you want one of those pretty lines?
Yeah, thoughts? Lines are good.
You can get there and the one without lines.
I was with the county department or municipal department. So I've never actually operated with Uniform 42. As common as they are here. Municipal.
Survey team friends, I'm gonna remind you guys that that is Kelly, Jeanette, John, and myself and Brian. What we didn't do is appoint one of us to talk about what kind of, where we're at and what kind of feedback we need. Does anybody want to volunteer? I'm happy to do it, but I don't know. if
Good luck.
Cookie.
I think you're on a roll. You should roll with it.
I'm okay with appointing you as the spokesperson tonight.
Okay. Well, general update. We spent a lot of time coming up with the narrative that would be in the survey, and the narrative is just trying to figure out how to boil down the observations in that, was it a 176 page report into, you know, a couple pages, right? A few pages maybe for the public to digest and have something to respond to. We're not showing you that narrative today. Although we think it's in pretty good shape, it's going to need to change based on the feedback we are asking from you tonight. Which the conversation is kind of can't proceed without knowing what we want to survey. We know generally we want to understand people's expectations of service levels and their willingness to pay for those increased service levels. What we've decided is to try to adopt an approach around, sometimes we talk about it in terms of cars. Is it the Fiat, the Chevy, and the Lexus, or is it just, maybe it's easier to just say good, better, best in terms of these service level options? And then, so that is being worked in with the work that the Fire Authority Board has been doing to take and put numbers on the recommendations that were in that report. So what you have in front of you is, you can see that better is undefined. The Fire Authority Board is gonna meet is it next Wednesday? No, it's Wednesday, the 4th. We're gonna have a couple hour work session to really talk about this and this alone and hopefully finalize that conversation. So what I want to do, I'm going to hand it off to Kelly really soon because I think he's the one best suited, Fire Authority staff is best suited to describe what's actually here. Generally, I would describe a couple of things to know. The current budget deficit is in here in all of the options because all of the options should involve us not being insolvent in 8 years.
Exact numbers.
And we have completed our wage study, which we think is gonna cost $68,000 a year to complete. That's where these are similar, and then where they depart is below that. If you look at this sheet, you'll see a list of expenses. You'll see the number of mills that those expenses would cost. Or alternatively, if we went a sales tax route, how much sales tax that would cost. Want to emphasize these numbers are not perfect. We're still trying to dial in our estimate of what the sales tax base is of the Fire Authority area. And especially the best, Kelly had put together a schedule, because of, which years would we try to do what things, et cetera. This is a really compressed version of that with some estimates and some averaging, et cetera. So I think the question before you, the survey person is recommending that we survey the best. What he's suggesting is if we show up with a number lower than that, we'll never get back to that number. Best represents what Mission CIT said we need. And so his suggestion is we survey that number, we see where the public's at. If you look at these numbers, I think you'll find that probably not going to find a lot of support for a tax increase of that level. But it gives us some feedback to work with. So the feedback I think we're looking for is, do folks agree with that recommendation? Do folks think that we should be surveying based on a different number? And before we just open it up, I think what makes sense is for Kelly to describe what's in that best column. It's the most concise and understandable representation of what Mission CIT was asking us to accomplish, and I think it's just really helpful. So Kelly/Jeremy, whoever.
I went through the assessment and I put a price to everything they suggested that we should be doing. At the end of their sections, they had suggestions. I put a price to everything. And it looks quite a bit different than that. It goes 2024 through 2033. And there's a price on everything they suggested. It included suggested vehicle replacement and some suggested building capital improvements. So totals that we came up with on that are pretty big. And they suggested a capital reserve set aside of 500,000 each year. So average with that list is probably around, I'd say probably 5 million a year. And then you add our operating costs to that for current operations, and it keeps bringing it up. So George compressed this quite a ways, and we'll keep working at putting exact numbers to this. This gives us a place to start the discussion. He's got a mill equivalent, or a total mill required, and that's an average too, isn't that? Is that right? You averaged out the mill.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most, Donna got you, the assessor got you a very recent number of what a mill is worth in the fire authority area, and it's around $244,000. So it's just that number divided by our total funding gap.
And the two, you got obviously sales tax and a mill levy, and those are interchangeable, one or the other. Is that correct?
That's a one or the other. It's not trying to split them up between two. It's
Yeah.
either one of these would meet that gap.
Yeah, that's good.
And is the capital, is the capital reserve,
Yeah.
is the capital cost? Is that where your $500,000 capital reserve is?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And Kelly, I have a question just about, so are these the estimates that you put in, like the estimated cost for staffing, fire marshal year round?
Yeah, I based it off of a study done this year that we got a hold of that showed
I just wanted to make sure it's not numbers from the report that you pulled in. These are
We pulled in a wage
numbers.
study from departments all over the state of Colorado. That's correct.
Okay, great.
You get these numbers?
yeah, they're more current and probably more in there. I put in there the average number rather than the base or the high end.
Okay. And for these levels of good, better, best, as you have them, does that mean that this good doesn't include any of those recommendations, or is it just?
Right, correct. The good shows addition of 6 firefighters.
Yeah.
And 1 inspector. A wage increase that we're discussing.
Yep.
To make us competitive and able to retain the people we've built up.
Mhm.
And then that $500,000 set aside for the capital. What you don't see here is that if we do the good and we get the ESD up to 9 mils, we can do quite a bit with that and get that capital reserve number in there. But it limits doing a lot of stuff in the best list. That's why we need to come up with a better defined
Mhm.
mid-range.
Any questions about I was thinking people might want explanations of what the staff positions are, but maybe it's self-explanatory.
Kelly, the overtime seems high to me. What, do you know the reason for that, or what the reasoning was in the reports for that? Or-
I did it at 20% of, and that would include the new staffing. That would start. Well, actually, that would start in 2025, so that's, and that includes adding a fire inspector. So yeah, it's pretty high, the wage cost, and it was suggested, but I'm not sure that's something we would put in there because that is expensive and
Yeah.
I think when there was comments in there that they would rather have the overtime because they can't take their time and a half off. That wasn't a good representation of the entire staff. So we're not sure yet on that. We got,
Always trying to balance between, okay, how much overtime is too much, and then you just hire more full-time. to
Yeah.
offset some of that.
yeah,
That'd probably need more evaluation, I'm sure.
Kelly, I have a question too. In your best column, does it have the 500,000 annual capital in that one as well, or is that just for the good column?
that would continue all the way through.
Would it be an increase then, an additional thing to the best?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be every year. So, and you can't see that with this chart, the detail of it, but,
So is that 500,000 included in this total, the best?
it is.
Okay.
It's in both.
It's buried in the capital.
It is.
Oh, I see.
It's inside that 100, got it. Got it.
So just to be, just to make clear that no one else is confused by this the way I was a second ago, but you know, we're not, this isn't like the new tax structure that replaces the old tax structure. This is in addition to our current tax structure that's funding.
This is in addition to the 4.5 mils.
And
And
we need to get the ESD up to 9 to do that. And then we need to keep looking at further increase like the tax.
Right, and
Sales tax would make a huge difference.
so my point was to do these additions is this much, to do these additions is this much, in addition to the taxes we're already paying. So if you, for example, whatever method you use to get there, if you couldn't get this done till you got to a Title 32, you'd be doing a whole new thing. And so it would really be this number of mills and or some blend of mills and sales tax that would have to also absorb the current funding and become larger than that. Right?
I think the mill would be similar. A Title 32 would have to have a higher mill level because there would be more stuff inquired in there with elections on, every 2 years. Election costs, you're gonna have to do
So this is
quite a few more things, so.
this row here where it says number of mills and sales tax percent, that would be number of mills increase or
yes,
sales tax increase.
in addition to
In
the status
addition
quo
to-
that was in our 2024 budget.
And my point is, when you went, if this were to be a replacement type thing, you would have to go, you went to the public and said, here's the whole new enchilada and what it takes to get us what we want. It would be this plus what we're paying today.
Yes. Currently, the municipalities are at 9 mils and the ESD is at 4.569. So.
The municipalities, sorry, are at 9 mills
Yes,
each.
9 mil equivalent, yeah. Georgetown's a little under because they did a stepped increase, but they're pretty close.
Did Empire get there this year?
It's not on the ballot. We just covered the contribution.
So you are paying.
You were in the equivalent. Yeah.
So what does the committee, the survey committee, that's separate folks need to move forward?
What? The question now that people are kind of understanding these two numbers, do we agree with the recommendation of the polling guy, the survey guy, Bill, WR Communications, Bill Ray? His recommendation is that we survey around what the report asked for. And we take that information to help us figure out, what to actually propose. I'm guessing, let's just say hypothetically, if we find out that these numbers aren't what the community thinks they want to afford, which seems likely, then we have some information to work on and figure out what we're really designing for. And this would plan would involve a second survey around, hey, we surveyed you once around sort of the Cadillac or the best. We heard your feedback. We're surveying you now around something that's reflective of your feedback. Do we like that path? Is there a different path that you want to suggest the survey team go down? That's the question.
I have a question. So you're saying the survey would inform how best changes to better?
The survey could inform how best changes to better. I mean, it would be, here's our problem. Here's the recommendation, right? This is the things that these experts think that we need. Do you agree? Is this the kind of service level you want? And are you willing to pay for it? Is what that survey, what the recommendation is. And correct me if you think I'm mischaracterizing.
That's right.
And then how you word it is going to be really important to make sure they understand the question that I was asking a little bit ago, that this is your total amount you're gonna be paying, or this is your additive amount somewhere, it's to really understand what's going on. You're paying this much now, you need to pay this much more, equal this much total, get you so that so you're getting accurate data back to the, because you don't want to go to the ballot with something that people misunderstood.
George, do you have any idea, and maybe we don't yet, but a quick example of saying, in order for us to go to this best, what does that in practical terms mean of an increase? You know, like you're currently, the average person is currently paying this. And if we were to do this best model, this is how much it would increase, just a like complete dumbed down version. What would that be? Do you have any idea?
Trying to remember back to what Libby told us a mill was worth. She just told us, she said 1 mil costs you a pizza a year. So.
It depends on what kind of.
For a specific valuation of house. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
You guys look like.
I can spend
Bojos. Okay, like, live here. I said that. So, I mean, we can do some quick math to get to that, but I think a mill costs the average home like $20-$30 a year. To give you like a rough.
I think the other piece of that though is we're gonna figure that out because it's gonna be data that's gonna be in the survey in addition to service levels based on what people are willing to fund.
So I'm
But we have
rough
got-
numbers. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how much the average person can expect. I mean, I know this is preliminary at best, but if it was $20 and then we're talking about the maximum of 24 mils,
22, 21.
21, but that, you said that's an increase on what we have.
That's, yeah.
But what do we currently have? Is it 4?
4.5.
So 25 then. So times 25. So it's $500.
See, we haven't gotten into those details yet until we know what it is we're surveying on.
No, I know, but I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying we're shooting for the best. So you gotta have at least an idea of going, we're asking people what they want, right? But can we afford what they want? Because there's a big difference in what we need versus what we want. So I just feel obligated to have, at least have an expectation.
Well, that's why we're also asking them, what are they willing to pay for?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get to.
The survey would ask.
Yeah.
What,
It sounds like there's interest in like the background of the survey, kind of providing some of these per person costs, or maybe
Right.
one of the
Yeah.
questions.
I think the survey should have.
As the authority approaches the service level of best, is there an opportunity there for the ISO ratings to improve? And therefore save the taxpayers some money?
No, because we're already in a position now that with the next ISO evaluation, we should go to a 3. We should have the points. And honestly, that's as low as we're probably ever gonna go in a mountain community is 3. Okay. So we've been improving this ISO. We went to a 4 years ago, year and a half ago. I can't remember what we did. Went from 5 to a 4, and I'm in the process of requesting the next evaluation because we had some municipal water record issues. It's the one thing that we missed it by like 4 points. And we lost like 40 points in that one category, which breaks down to about 12 points when you break it down to. So ISO is increasing, so it really wouldn't reduce ISO beyond getting to a 3 from an insurance perspective.
When would that occur?
Hopefully sometime in the spring.
Okay.
It's kind of a moving target when we can
It's
get
not
into the
2 years
cycle.
away though.
No,
Okay.
I'll request it. It took us about 7 months last time, and I requested till the time the evaluator got us in the schedule and made the visit. So we're trying to get to a 3 going
One
into
of the
25.
Good things that the fire authority's done for everybody.
Okay.
We were trying to come up with that list earlier today.
Yeah, that's a good one to add.
So I've got that. I also have noted as an outcome, the survey should estimate the annual cost to a person of these options. We can also figure out like what a person's average income looks like in this community and what they'd be paying in sales tax on that income. So I've got that.
So I'm hearing a lot of information around how to communicate the information up front. Do Does everyone generally agree with this approach of starting with surveying about the best? Being clear and communicating about what that is, how it compares to current service levels and what.
I think it's easier to pare down from the big list that has everything that you want on it than it is to try and add things in when people have said, okay, I'm comfortable with this. Well, how about if we add this? And then you're trying, why didn't you just ask me in the first place?
And when given a list, the responses can help
Yeah, the thing is,
identify those priorities.
it's not like where you go to Safeway and you spend so many dollars and you come home with a bag of stuff. I mean, what you do is you pay more money to know that when your house catches on fire, something can happen. You don't actually bring it's not like there's a thing sitting in your living room after you pay these taxes, other than, a sense of security.
So what I'm hearing. Sorry.
Well, we discussed about having comparative other districts,
Yep.
some charts to show where we're at.
Kelly put that together and yeah, so what I'm hearing is, let's see what people think about best and we'll go from there. And so I think the survey, when you see the draft survey, it will reflect that. And I've got some notes about what to make sure is in it. And survey team, is there anything else we need?
This one.
Is it agreed then that the thing to do first is to go do a simple survey and check out the appetite for the whole enchilada? Just find out where it falls. Even though we have expectations about where it's gonna fall, it'll tell us right where it falls on that scale somewhere or pretty close. And then go back to the drawing board.
I think so.
So I guess another question, when we ask in the survey, are we asking them, here's options, or is it more like, if you want this is what it's gonna cost you? And then go back later and go, well, here's another option, it's a little bit cheaper, are you more open to that model? I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, if I read this for the first time and I'm seeing this is gonna cost me $500 additional, like the real number impact, do we have options? Does it have to be best? I'm like, you see what I'm saying? When they get this model, it's like, oh my gosh, this is sticker shock. This is gonna cost me a whole lot more money. Now, granted, I want my house protected, that's like but the sticker shock of that, is it just like, here's your option, that's it? Or we're saying there's options. I don't know how we're trying to drive the survey. Is it, we're trying to go to one thing and that's it?
We discussed this on the survey.
I think it would be good for him to be at the next survey meeting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we did discuss this, and if we're gonna give them the good or the best, they're gonna pick the good because it's cheaper, period. So our consultant's suggestion is, which is what George has been explaining, is let's start at the best. See what appetite there is there. If there's not an appetite there, then we're gonna pare it back into what can help us define the better?
The next.
The next step.
I got you. Okay. No, that makes sense. I'm just trying to think for my normal person that's gonna come to me with pitchforks, because they do that easy in Georgetown.
Well, if they say, what do you get? What do you
Yeah.
get for it?
Yeah.
We need to be able to say what the improvement is.
Yeah.
I gotta have some kind of an idea.
Yeah.
We'll be there with this many people in this amount of time. We'll be there with that many people in that amount of time, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that'll be hard to define,
Yeah.
but we can say that we can make it better.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that if you want to know the difference between good and best. I think that was a pretty predictable response that you're gonna get. Oh, okay, I'll take good. Good is good, right? So a lot of that's messaging.
Can I ask another question too? When I look at the spreadsheet, we're assuming this is a good, better, best. Are we really not good? We're more like, okay. We're, is it like, if here's my option, here's a good increase.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I think we are probably okay. I'm not gonna sugarcoat like, oh, we're doing amazing. We're in a unique situation when you look at our district. And Randy brought this up a couple meetings ago. when you look at the standards, all of our municipalities except for Idaho Springs, ironically, is urban under the standard, which is the same standard as Denver, like it's Lakewood. Idaho Springs missed it by just a notch. 'Cause we had just a little more space to fit the people. So, yeah, we're doing okay. You know, we're doing good things with what we have, but we struggle every day trying to figure out how we can get the workload done with the staffing and personnel that we have and the time we have. So every day's a struggle. Every dollar spent is what's the highest priority? And where do I cut money out of this line to make sure this line fits what we have to do operationally? And that's a day-to-day operational struggle. And it's been that way for at least the 4 years, the last 4 years, but.
So okay is not sustainable.
Right, and that's what that brings us to
From
this
a
point,
level of
right?
service and from the capacity of the individuals that are working.
Exactly, so that's why we're to the point now where do I think the Cadillac that the consultants put out is it's an ideal in a fantastic world. It'd be amazing. I'm not gonna argue that. It'd be great to have that kind of staffing levels. But there is a place, I think, in the middle between even the good is better than we are today. Drastically improved from where we are today with the six new additional firefighters and a fire inspector. That right there makes a huge difference compared to the workload we have today. So yeah, probably there's a place that's better that fits people's budget and gives us the capacity we need for the next 20 to 25 years. Because while we're doing okay on a daily basis and we're getting things done, we're equally falling behind on other things depending on priorities and what's going on. So
From a perspective of transparency in communications, I do like the idea of saying, you know, here's the recommendation and seeing the response. I just like that. It was the surveyor that suggests that good, better, best is the framing. I kind of like talking about cars a little better because we all know what it's like to drive in a car that you're always working on the side of the road, right? And what it's like to drive in a Cadillac. Some of us know, you know, we can at least fantasize about what it's like to drive in a Cadillac.
So is it good?
Sorry, a GTI.
It's not meant to be personal.
no,
Is it good or is it the minimum effective fire department?
well, we're above minimum effective right now, but
How-
so I
when
think
we
the good
present it
is,
to the community, what do you describe it as?
well, I guess the thing with the good is, you know, from a risk reduction, if risk reductions is one of our primary priorities, that's where we start needing, we need the extra capacity. So we need the fire inspector. I would welcome a fire inspector.
I think it's,
So that's an example of improving our ability to do risk reduction.
So the narrative I'm kind of hearing is current is effective, but not sustainable. These are the recommendations to get us the best.
Yeah, due to the fiscal restraints of the organization currently, we can't over the long term sustain our current staffing.
Yes.
what we're asking for in the good section is a third of that is going to paying for what we're doing now without any improvements.
Right.
A third of that mill levy, because you're looking at a current budget deficit of $834,000.
Yes, sir.
And you're looking at an amount to fund the taxes of 2593. So a third of this is simply picking up the shortfall for what we're paying now.
Exactly.
And so therefore, under good, the improvements that we're making are fairly minimal. They're getting us to what we, I mean, you know, we're above minimum standard now, and I agree, you guys are doing everything you can with what you've got to work with. But if we want to see that you and your staff are rewarded better and that we have enough to do more at all, the good side just barely does that. What it really does is pay up the arrears. It pays for the
Plus,
back
it
rent.
gives you that fire inspector position and it gives you 6 more firefighters. So it does make an improvement.
Right.
And
But it
if
does
that's
pay
all we
taxes.
did, and we got a sales tax to help fund it, we could do a bunch of good stuff over the future, but we can't be the Cadillac.
Yeah, what I was trying to state was that how we message to the public, they need to know that they're not paying the bill now. We, the public, are not paying the bill now. We're all part of the public too.
Yeah.
And,
I would add the wage increase and that annual capital reserve to the like, what does it take to be sustainable with what we're doing now? Cause I mean, we're not gonna keep our staff.
oh yeah, that's part of the now, not the, yeah.
Like I would just add that to the budget deficit. Actually, I'm pretty sure the Fire Authority Board is gonna go ahead and add that to the budget deficit next year.
Okay. So I'm hearing general support for where the survey committee is headed, so thanks for taking it on.
Yeah, because you haven't seen the narrative of it yet. The narrative that's gonna go out to explain it to the public is very positive. The bill suggested, okay, don't go in and say, oh, the sky is falling, we need more. It goes in very positive. Our fire department is doing a fantastic job. However, the needs are outpacing the capacity. So that's how the initial framing comes out. So it is trying to frame it where, hey, everything is growing and we need more. So even though this says good, better, best, it doesn't frame it in a way of, oh my gosh, they need help. It's more about that there are needs. We have more people coming through and we have an aging population. So it really explains those things as to why they need more. And that's what we're still working on, putting that information together and then adding the numbers and adding graphics. So people see a visual representation of why they need more and how much more that really is. So I think it'll be really good when it all gets put together, but.
I guess one thing I've heard tonight that doesn't sound like it fit into that narrative is Randy's point of at present, we're not putting.
Yeah, I think George has thought that the capital and the wage increase are what we need to be sustainable at the current model, along with picking up the budget deficit, that those are the things that simply make more solid what we have today without adding any more people or anything like that. It just makes sure we are hanging on to our people and rewarding them properly. If you look at it like that, then only 2.83 of these 10.63 mills are going to new stuff. You're really looking at 7.8 of those mills are just catching us up to where we are today and actually funding it the way it should be funded with proper wages, paying for the deficit and putting enough capital in there to be able to keep the equipment from deteriorating.
Okay, so I'm hearing agreement, keep moving on, excitement to look at a draft of the survey, I think. And let's keep that in mind, so that you'll have some of this information when we discuss how to modify the IGA after.
We don't meet again for 2 weeks. Survey team.
Meanwhile, if anybody wishes, I could meet with you and get into the detail of this much further with the funding and the suggestions and what we may be looking at, so.
You
It's
also,
open to that.
sorry. You also all should feel invited to the public meeting that is our work session on the 4th. It'll be at the fire station. It's on the 4th of September. Are we starting at 6 o'clock? You all are obviously encouraged to attend. Our authority board is going to try to figure out how to define better. Kind of go through this stuff and think through what we've,
Want to.
Question.
And,
So, where does the new fire station for Idaho Springs fall on this?
It's at the very bottom. It's not in the list.
not in there.
Okay,
It's separate.
it's not even in the best.
It would be in the
It
best.
would be the best, okay.
Yeah, but it would make the best cost more. Quite a bit more than,
Oh. So
it's not in this.
Not in this best.
no, it's not. We didn't. Because the discussion in the study suggested that we look at the at remodeling versus building new.
Right.
So those kind of capital things are not built into these numbers. They're more,
Is the remodel?
the remodel's not in there. We've already done that, or part of it. To do more, we haven't looked at the cost of that yet.
It includes, that capital item is $500,000 a year just for your capital reserve. That could be enough revenue to pay off a building that costs $5 million.
Then you wouldn't be able to do any other capital stuff.
It also includes the other 1.1 million is the estimate to their recommendation to pretty much buy a completely new fleet. So that's what is in there. To your question.
So in the good, the 500,000 is just for fleet and equipment,
It's just for,
capital equipment,
yeah, and it's not
not.
assigned. It's to build that back up.
But is that committed, just committed to rolling stock?
It's not committed to anything. It's just only committed to replenishing what we've been deficit spending.
This is something I want to go back and read the report and understand. They have these specific capital needs that they list out. And they also mention $500,000 a year. And I don't know if they're saying $500,000 a year should help you meet this need, or if they're saying you need this and 500,000. I just don't remember what it says. But that might help answer this.
So just one other question on that. So what's causing the big jump in capital from 500 a year to 1.4?
The vehicle replacement schedule.
Okay, so accelerating that.
Yeah, that's the suggested vehicle plate replacement.
Okay.
What also includes the building upgrades of our existing buildings. That's a much smaller number.
Right. So is that a policy decision that the fire authority is going to be making about? I'm not just trying to focus on it. I was curious about the, site that was obtained for the fire station. And I don't want to get sidetracked, but I think it's just important because that's a big item is that probably going to be a policy decision to kind of stay in the current station in Idaho Springs for the near term? And I know we're doing some renovations there and it seems to work.
I don't think there'll be a decision on it. I think it definitely has to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
And that needs to be considered for the, this best list was put together as what they suggested. It didn't include our capital plan. So to add that in there is gonna make that mill levy number go up.
Is there no overlap between the recommendations and the capital plan?
No.
So just to clarify this, so the mission CIT recommendation was for non-station, non-apparatus items. That's what their $500,000 was for. Breathing apparatus, pipe, thermal imaging cameras, rescue equipment, et cetera. That's at least what the study.
So not for vehicles.
Not for vehicles, not for state.
Just for capital equipment.
Capital equipment. That was their recommendation.
So, I mean, you're kind of begging a question. Should BEST involve enough money to fund at least like a lease purchase on either a savings account or a lease purchase on a new station in Idaho Springs? And over what time period?
Yeah, just bring it up because I think that's an important issue for our city because there's been talk for years and planning for a new fire station up at the 240 interchange. And I think either can work, either, staying where the station is now and renovating it, that could serve our community well for quite a while. But there's also some of the community have been thinking, well, this is the way we're going. We're getting a new station. It'll be co-located with the ambulance station there, and that seemed to make sense. We made some efforts to make that happen. So I just think that's an important point because if we're going to survey, I think that would be a natural thing the community would want to know is, does this include a new fire station or not? Or what's the plan for our fire station? I know it's a fire authority in county, but you know, there's a lot of pride and ownership in having in the fire, in the structure, right? And the structure doesn't make the department, but I can tell you that's, you know, just in my experience, that's a big deal because people focus on that, take pride in that building, whether it's a building that's being restored or whether it's a new building.
I think Andy opens up the perhaps a larger question is, how is that $900,000 per year gonna be parsed out? The difference between good and best on capital is $900,000 a year. So what's that $900,000 targeted for?
I would have to sit with you and go over the list to show you.
Okay. I'm just,
And we could do that, and it might be valuable to all of you ultimately to see that, because replacing our fleet of vehicles. And I cut that sheet out. Well, no, it's here. Capital alone for 2027 was $13 million. And that included a station.
Okay.
So, mill equivalent for the fire station is 19 mills just for the station. So that's part of the discussion we need to have, and I would be happy to do that with you because I think your input would be very valuable.
Sure. I mean, I think the question is, should best include a new station?
It doesn't.
10 years. Well, should it is the question. What does the group think? Should it? Because we can get these numbers in there and change them. Like these aren't final.
And I'll be putting numbers together for that question for the best to include all of our capital plan items.
So would that be adding taking 21 plus 19 mills,
Yes.
be 40 mills?
To do a fire station that year.
Or you decide you're gonna save up or lease purchase, or you don't necessarily have to spend it all in 1 year.
Or do we take the best list and we put a building in there, but we don't put all of that paid staff in there that is top heavy. And we don't do all of the vehicle replacement that doesn't make sense for us because we're not a metro department running the wheels off of them.
Sure.
So there's room there for that I think we could do it real well with, even with getting everybody to 9 mills and doing a sales tax.
Would it be worthwhile to add another column to or like another section to the right here that's best with a station, just at least for the discussion of this group? I want to kind of put an action item on this and give everybody a break and move forward. But I saw Rick's. I don't hear you.
No, I was scratching my head.
Oh.
Did see John wait.
I just wonder if Georgetown station expansion.
Yeah, that's in these numbers. Yeah.
So is that what your next meeting for the board, are you looking at redefining best, or were you just trying to find those middle numbers? I mean, is that maybe the exercise that needs to happen at the fire authority board meeting? Is do we redefine what's in that best list? Because maybe we're not even all comfortable with what best says. Maybe we want to change that. Because Kelly did go straight from the report because he's matching up with what we're trying to do. Do we change that and make it a little bit more realistic? What do we think best is? Is that what we're saying? Is that we want to redefine that a little bit?
We need to, the two of us need to sit and go over that.
Move it around, yeah,
See what we think would be effective
yeah.
and that we could do that doesn't, if you're working 2 jobs, you don't go buy a Cadillac, you'd settle for the 4Runner maybe.
what about, I like where you're going there. What if the outcome in addition is rework best, get funding for a station in there, take out what you need to without increasing that number? I think we all have sticker shock at that number already.
I really think that's a great idea, and I think it's a huge win for Idaho Springs. I think your people will be way more favorable of seeing that. And I think the rest of us, if that also includes modifications to the other stations, they see that as a win, and I think it's worth doing. So I agree with that.
Okay. I think we figured it out.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I keep this.
Thank you, Andy, for bringing that up. It's a huge question and very important for. I don't. Let's take a break. What time are we at? Let's take a 12-minute break.
How long are we going?
Aren't we set to?
Did you see that?
7:30, wasn't it?
I think everyone expects 7:30. So do you,
I'm good with.
do we want a break?
Want to keep going?
I can just run to the bathroom really fast.
I'm getting some water, but I'll be back in 2 seconds. I did have it till 8. 'cause
I thought it was 8.
Trying to do
We were
it.
trying to,
But I'm okay
we were
with
trying to
it.
be a little bit more than 2 hours, so. But I have.
Goodbye, drinks.
Yeah.
It shows you what you really need to look at. for-
Anytime.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. Just-
It is 8 o'clock?
Yeah, it is on the,
Okay.
Okay.
I thought
Hours.
yeah, it's on the calendar for 8.
Virgin on these numbers.
that worked for everybody.
They really should be more exact rather than average.
Make our terms longer.
I don't know what they're doing.
So that once this term, this 2-year term ends, we will go to 4-year terms. But we're still term limited, so there'll only be 2 terms.
That's what's started. So you have to release.
Makes sense. So 4 years does make sense. 2 years is the quarter. I mean,
Constitution. 2 years is.
Alrighty,
Okay.
my first question is a very important one.
Oh.
It's schedule we're gonna work back from. So an IGA modified for signature by what date amongst this group?
This, you mean agreed upon here to go to the boards for a signature?
Yeah. Agreed upon amongst this group to go to boards for signature.
Before November 1.
I was thinking the same number at a latest, yeah.
So does that give people enough time to write it? So maybe the better question is, when do we have to be done in this room?
Yep.
Give people like the attorneys time to
agreed who's
draft it, to then get us to.
Well, the first question is, when does the attorney need to hand over something for the boards to sign?
Because that's the November 1 then.
Okay.
I think November 1, yeah, because you're only talking a few more meetings, business meetings for the municipalities, and typically they may not have one second meeting in December. So, and it's budget adoption time, a lot going on.
That's the absolute latest.
I think it's the latest to get it, to have it ready, distributed to the municipalities.
By what date you send your agreement?
I think November 1st, yeah.
What?
November 1st to the
Yeah,
municipalities.
that's what by the time you
I think so.
have a meeting and
Get a
hopefully it's
schedule.
socialized enough in here and a little bit out beyond that you don't have much trouble when you get there.
Okay. So Peter, how much time do we need back from November 1?
well, it does depend on who is drafting the agreement. Also depends on just how significant the changes are going to be in substantive. So the agreement was originally drafted by Bob Cole of the Fire Authority. The one back in 2011, 2012. And then the revisions were done by Bob Cole. That I know for sure. Then it came over to us. We did additional drafts, and that's when I basically took over at that point when we were changing and addressing the drafts. We would send it back to Bob, and there would be some counter back and forth. But so I think the question is who's going to be driving that train? Is it going to be Bob Cole? Or is it going to be me? So based on the smile, I'm guessing it's probably going to be me. I think we need to have, if that's the case, realistically, I think we need to be settled on the terms, the general terms, I would think, by October 1st in terms of the terms so that we can draft the language and circulate the language and make sure that it's consistent with what everybody thinks. And I believe some of the circulation of the language can be done directly with the various municipalities where I'd reach out, tell you to send it to your attorneys or whomever, and make sure that we can get that and then still bring it back before this group sometime towards the end of October. And then I think we're fine.
All right.
Is that?
So today's conversation, what questions do we need to answer? What information do we need to answer those questions to get to those terms by October 1st? That's what we're talking about. Okay. That is an aggressive schedule and we'll figure it out.
It is, but we're almost in September, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so we already had a couple questions about board representation. My understanding is that the details of board representation those terms need to be pretty nailed down before signing, while the terms of funding exploration and the exploration of like the ultimate decision of do we pursue a Title 32 and the ultimate decision of how do we back away from this funding cliff are within. We don't need to perfectly answer those questions now. We just need to make sure we're outlining how you'll get to that point. Is that a correct understanding of what these three modifications are? I'm seeing some nods and some confusion, maybe.
I think you have the right order of what we should talk about. And I think we should get into the agreement, whatever we figured out we agree on.
Okay. So board representation, what questions do we have? We had a few already. What's the kind of? It would be unincorporated areas that are densely populated. Do you have a definition for more densely populated?
It's like, the way I think of it is how many new seats, so that we have some level of parity.
So how many new seats?
Am I correct that there's currently an even number of board members? Is that right? 6?
8.
8?
Eight.
8? So I think that's a practical matter that needs to be addressed. It
Yeah.
can be addressed by the representation, but I'm just saying that that's an issue that's been hanging out there. Usually don't have an even number of, it's not necessarily a
Yeah.
best practice or desired practice.
Generally only gets one vote. It's not like
Okay.
get two.
So you
Georgetown
don't
gets-
get, you don't get a lot of tie votes or, that's not an issue.
No.
No.
I think sorry, I think everybody on the board gets a vote.
Yes.
I thought we changed
Yes.
it last year.
No, there are certain things. in
For
the
board
bylaw.
matters, but not for IGA matters. Can't change that representation. You change your vote seats, which would be in the IGA.
Does that mean adding board seats would introduce more parties to the IG? That doesn't mean more parties to the IGA.
No, but
No,
So
it has
each
to be
party the
defined in the
gets
IGA.
One vote on IGA matters, but board matters, each individual board member gets a vote.
yeah,
I don't think we should I understand what you're saying. Let's not complicate it in terms of, we all, I think, understand that the municipalities and the ESGID are the ones that vote on the IGA. But we're talking here about the board representation of the fire authority itself. Right now, Idaho Springs has 2 members, county has 2 members. ESGID has 2 members, Georgetown has 2 members, Silver Plume and Empire each has 1.
So to Andy's point, the board is an even number.
Right.
The question is, should the board be an odd number to?
a lot of times it's, you kind of strive for an odd number just so that you avoid eventuality, but if it's not created a problem, I'm not really sure it deserves a ton of attention. What I would like to talk about is, is Georgetown willing to give up one of our representatives? Because if we're doing it more on a population even distribution, does Georgetown lose one? Does Idaho Springs lose one? And that makes room for a couple of other areas. How many other areas need to be represented? And I think you guys had suggested using one of your maps that you've come up with for drawing lines around population areas like St. Mary's and.
Yeah, kind of what George and I talked about this. I think if you leave the current board configuration as is and just add positions, I think it's more effective.
Okay,
And if you look at Floyd Hill, Blue Valley, Chicago Creek respectively, its own thing, St. Mary's, Fall River, DLD, which includes Mill Creek. Those are your population dense areas within unincorporated, because west of Empire is a very low population area. Grinnell Pass is pretty low, but that's your big unincorporated population area. So if you represent them appropriately, however that looks like, that's what we're talking about. That would, I think, fix the issue that we're talking about as far as how do we give them a better seat at the table, from a representative
Okay.
perspective?
So the interest
So is that like three more?
is additive for changing any of the current.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
there's one that's not filled right now, right? That one of the ESGID seats.
Yeah, one's currently,
And that's at large. That doesn't have to represent a certain spot. It's just at large. So you just named off 6 places.
So you end up with.
Have one that's available.
I would bunch them. I think we were talking about that with.
Oh.
So, like, if you wanted somebody from the Floyd Hill Saddleback area, it would be ideal. That would make sense. You want somebody from Chicago Creek, Blue Valley, Soda Creek geographic area, it makes sense. You want somebody from St. Mary's Fall River, and you want somebody from DLD and Mill Creek, right? Which counts for adding 3 plus the 1 at large for a total of 5 for ESD. It covers that population.
So what parameters, what kind of considerations are helping you estimate the areas that would get?
It's like, what, 6,300 people, and you take the population from the municipalities out of that, and it basically splits the county almost in half between unincorporated and those that live in the municipality.
Is it is how many new seats and where they are only determined by population? Is that of agreement amongst this group?
I think to me, it makes sense is if the goal of this is to represent those higher density populations that do have some unique risks involved and should have a seat at the table, that I think that's how I would approach it. I'm just suggesting, I'm not a decision maker.
Right.
Somebody with a suggestion.
Does anybody see that differently, that there's something other than population that needs to be considered? So the board seats as they are remain, it would be additive representation based on population.
Sounds good.
When we covered that, I have nothing to say.
Okay. So a next step is to identify
How many more?
those areas. Do we want to limit it?
Be 3 on top of what we have.
Rather
11
than
people.
sound
Give us
smart,
an
let
odd
me say
number.
what I was going to say before the conversation ended and all agreed on. We, at this time currently, it's not viable. It's probably, I'm guessing, it's unlikely to expect that Silver Plume and Empire don't still want to see at a few hundred people. And I'm guessing that comments in this room notwithstanding right now, there might be a strong sentiment in Idaho Springs and Georgetown that they still like 2 seats. And so it's not at all population based right now. And so I think it's good to look at population as we move forward in this. But at this stage, trying to create an IGA is pretty simple. We can make some, without getting too, it seems a little silly to get really scientific about carving out this many people and putting this with this to keep them all really equitable, when we have these other seats that are represented by somewhere between 170 or 300 or 1,000, or they're just kind of all over the board. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that to hold one place to a standard that we don't hold the others to. So it seems like we have a pretty good handle on what those places are, if we can name them, and we should look at population, obviously, and density to think about that. But my guess is it's gonna get unwieldy if we get too many people. I'm guessing 3 more seats is gonna be a bunch. We got 8 now, 3 more seats would be 11.
It's a big
And
board.
that'd be a pretty good sized board. That's a three seats to represent 3 areas is a big board, so you can almost, point at 3 places and say, these are the 3 that, and you can verify that by looking at the maps. Matt can do that in a hurry. But,
Or you can change from population to geography.
well,
The unincorporated area already has 2 seats, so what do those seats represent?
that's a good point.
I kind of like that thought is you have the 2 unincorporated seats. What about allocating those to like planning regions in the county and then adding a 3rd? So what I think I heard, maybe 3 areas in the county maybe need more direct representation. So St. Mary's, DLD, and Floyd Hill, as an example. And then you're not getting your board too unwieldy, but you're also trying to get people from those distinct areas having representation.
One of the things that's been in my mind as we're talking about questions we need to answer is, can we come up with ways to make the geographic area specific members independent? of the Board of County Commissioners to, you know, to the extent possible, right? I like trying to put myself in your shoes. We're talking about 5 total appointees by this board. That's almost half the board. We don't want them all necessarily like taking direction from us. And so I think like a distinction between what we have right now, which is the 2 at-large members that are kind of representing, like you all do, the position of the county government, right? The position of the Idaho Springs government, of the Georgetown government. Maybe we like, instead of, maybe we set some guardrails. Maybe what we say is that Board of County Commissioners nominates, but the board has to approve it. And then they get a term and can't just be fired if they make a vote that the Board of County Commissioners doesn't like or something.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I have in my mind as a question is what are ways to make these geographic area specific members independent?
Well, it could be that those geographic areas, I mean, it doesn't have to be they're appointed by the county commissioners, by the Board of County Commissioners. It can be that they're appointed by another body that's given status to be able to do that, which could be a homeowners association that's particular to that area, as an example. I mean, there are a couple of ways we could probably go at it. It would be nice for the county, for the Board of County Commissioners to still have an appointee that's specifically at large, that's ours. I mean, you don't want to give up your 2, you don't want to give up your 1, you know, we feel the same way. We care about it. We still want to be here in the conversation. But I could see something where we have an appointee from the county and there are a couple of others that come from a couple of those areas, and maybe they're appointed by the county, or maybe they're appointed by homeowners association.
Does that make that homeowners association part of the idea?
Good
Because
point.
right now the board members are appointed by the 5 members, so
Yeah. That's a
I
good
could
point.
see you taking, asking for a suggestion, have them find those people for you, and then you approve those seats.
Something like that, or they have to come from that place.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to-
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
Include that in the IGA modification.
or they have to live within that area and we appoint them or something. Yeah.
That was another question that came up. Is it of interest to keep a new board representatives, residents of the area that's being represented?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's a question that we have to talk about.
That's one we deferred when I asked it earlier.
Yeah.
I said, when I got into the weeds right off the bat.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there's definitely interest in like, how do we make those, what kind of appointment process makes those folks feel independent? And I can't think of any other questions that we need to ask about that.
Well, Andy's suggestion, I think, does change the current board seats, correct?
Mhm.
Is that to minimize the size of the board, it would take the 2 unincorporated appointees and make them more specific to these 3 areas. And then there's fuller unincorporated that's not represented. Is that how that would work?
I'm leaning towards just embracing a kind of big board. It's a volunteer board. Well, you know, people kind of already kind of tend to pop in and out. I'm leaning towards just embracing a big board.
Other thoughts?
The kinds of things that the board has to decide. Do you currently struggle when you have all 7 people there? Does it feel like you get bogged down? I mean, what is the disadvantage of a really big board? Okay, it's harder to come to agreement, but it's just a majority vote. So is that a struggle? Do we have to think in terms of, no, we don't want it to be a big board?
I don't think so.
What's the pros and cons of the bigger board?
It's not a board that does a ton of dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, it's staff kind of brings us pretty mature recommendations and not a ton of dialogue on the board.
I think to the point of a large board.
Buy more chairs.
prioritizes.
Figured.
Prioritizes the necessity for it to be an
Well, now
all.
we have to raise the mills.
Does that make sense to you all to kind of prioritize that it's an uneven number of board seats? Because as it grows, you do grow that chance of tiebreak. Of tiebreak.
I think uneven's, that's just mine.
You think what?
I think uneven is better. I think
Yeah,
that's my
same here.
bias.
Okay. It's just like, it's not info needed, it just seems like a preference for uneven seats, seat number. Okay. So it sounds like the information really needed is a map saying where are these unincorporated areas that we want to include, what are their populations, and then you kind of nail down those terms of that to include in the IGA. And it sounds like the appointment process needs to be worked out. Maybe it remains the same, county appointed, but is there interest in making it more specific within the initiative? That's like kind of what Kelly suggested is the county appoints a seat and asks for like a suggestion from the unincorporated area. Is it of interest to get that specific into the IGA? The appointment process.
You could group Floyd Hill with.
I think having the map is going to be real helpful, just to kind of see the population densities. And I mean, I don't think it's a question here. People want representation, you know, and I think that we're all on the same page of that. And just being able to see what that number actually is. You know, is it 4 seat? Is it 3 seats that can actually take care of that? So.
I think it's a map and it's a listing of the populations of of like the unincorporated area and the municipalities.
Yeah.
I would suggest the appointment process should be flexible because you don't know what the future will bring. And putting in constraints into the IGA could be difficult for the appointing body.
It's true. And your population could change too.
Well, and you guys have had trouble filling that other seat anyway, and theoretically, you're already drawing on those areas that you want to represent. So actually requiring that a person come out of a specific geographic area could make it even more difficult to fill the seats.
Maybe
Well, that
like a no more than one.
Well, from a practical standpoint, and this goes to what Mitch was saying, so I'm wondering, let's say the Floyd Hill area you mentioned. I mean, once we define by a map exactly what's within that, how do you propose you solicit those people for the position, and does that need to be spelled out in the IGA? You know, or is that a process thing? I mean, I don't think it needs to be there. That's why I kind of agree with Mitch. We'd leave it open, but it is a practical consideration, right?
If I was the emperor, I'd go to the 2 very strong HSAs in the area, or HOAs rather.
Okay.
Because
I was kind of fantasizing on my drive home that maybe going out to these areas and saying, hey, you now have a dedicated board seat would sort of earn the interest necessary to get someone to show up.
So I guess my other question is, before we change, is I know how important it is to have representation. So you look at those areas that we just described. What's the implication if you choose to leave that group out? You know, like if we identify 4 areas or 3 areas and then your at-large ends up not being in that area, what are we doing to that area? You know, I feel like we're trying our best right now to be equitable, you know, make sure representation and I understand the at-large is important too, or, you know, the flexibility, but the end is I just don't want that group to feel like we fought this hard to get to this point and now we're we missed the mark because that whole population group is not represented and they may have special needs. So,
When you say that, you mean the people that aren't in one of those dense areas, but are in the unincorporated area?
yes,
That's where I think at least one at-large seat or one county one. It's not
Be able to hit it.
location specific. That's why I think that we would, that's one of the things that the board can do is appoint somebody that represents the county at large like that. And that we have two that are ostensibly for that purpose now. And so and that's why I think it's important if we happen to have some dense areas that are equal to any of the four cities represented in the room, then to establish a voice for those people, because what I heard, and a lot of this has to do, honestly, for me, it's been difficult since I know my heart's in the right place, and since I have lived in Georgetown and lived in Idaho Springs and lived in Empire, and I consider each one of them my hometown now more than where I came from. So when I hear that the Board of County Commissioners is not trusted, that's been a really hard thing to deal with. So part of saying that we want more representation is to dispel the myth that we're about consolidating and eliminating people's voice as opposed to expanding it and making it more proportional and effective. And so that's the reason I think to name a few places out there and make sure they're represented and they come from within their area is important to me. But eventually, if we ever end up going to a Title 32 for funding reasons, we're going to be pared back down to 7. And we're going to have a whole new game to play then. But how do we carve out 7 districts and 7 seats in which the towns still have at least the opportunity in election, if they campaign well, to have the kind of representation they have now, but the people that they're coupled with through this redistricting, because then the towns, that representative from that town, let's say you get 2 people running out of Idaho Springs and the border runs through Idaho Springs somewhere and you're in 2 different districts, same in Georgetown. There's no guarantee anybody is going to come from anywhere, but then you've got the obligation to represent not just your town, but all those people that are in your district that you're representing. Just to make things as complicated as I possibly could.
Thanks. Is the schedule for the renewing the IGA always on a 2-year schedule, or is that just the extension is a 2-year?
So this extension actually is it can go up to 2 years, 1 year at a time. So this would not be a 2-year extension. This would be a 1 year. But if the parties agree, what we would end up doing is having a new agreement. It wouldn't just amend, it would be a newly amended and restated agreement. So the term could be whatever you wanted it to be. It could be 18 months if you wanted it to be that, but.
Because
Which then becomes another question to answer.
Well, and then.
But to Rick's point, if the population could change in an area in 2 years, does the term of the IGA solve that problem? If we say that we're going to look at this every 2 years, if we missed an area or there was a population boom, if we're going to look at it every 2 years, then we're going to reevaluate that particular issue every 2 years. I didn't know how long, once it's a permanent IGA, how long does that go? I mean, I know it's not permanent, but.
Yeah, and that draws another question, because that's a great point. I think part of the non-negotiable element to me is you have representation from municipalities. That's a non-negotiable. So even though populations change, I mean, St. Mary's is probably always going to be bigger than your place, so it's like, that's a non-negotiable. However, the areas that are unincorporated that do change should have representation, and it gives us flexibility to change and add or subtract places where we think our representations are. So that's the only thing. It's like, whether Georgetown gets 1 vote or 2 votes, that's irrelevant to me. I just think that they should always have a representation because it's a municipality. So that's the only thing to me. And I don't know if that would be issues with anyone else.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is interest in municipal seats remaining at large that are not location-based remaining, and potentially these leaving the population-based seats flexible to reevaluation after set time.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing 5-year IGAs or something, then when you're ready to renegotiate the IGA, take a look at your populations and decide what fair looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope we can have an IGA that I've got enough confidence in by the end of this that I want it to last for more than a year.
Mhm.
It's a big goal of mine.
A whole lot easier when they last for 5 years and have a automatic 5-year renewal unless otherwise requested not to. Then we're not all having extra meetings for 6 months.
They've been so short over the last few years because we've had unresolved issues. We're so close to just having resolved issues that it could be longer.
And granted, if we end up taking more time and really going hard at the Title 32, we all understand that that board number is going to shrink and we're going to have to think through that and we're going to have to be okay with that. You know, but in this model, this still continued modified model, I think that's, we're moving in a great place right now.
So I think the next steps for this modification remain, but I'm curious others' thoughts on kind of that revisiting population-based seats, because that presents like a new seat style on your board. It's rotating and population-based. And it sounds like you're limiting it to 3.
They essentially already were that way. You could consider them at large or whatever. The last second seat with the ESD was from Floyd Hill. Happened to be where he lived.
And this is asking for more intention
That was from Chicago Creek.
around that recruitment of board members.
It's just a matter who the ESD board decides they want to appoint. You can solicit them yourselves, or you can ask homeowners groups in those areas that you want more opportunity for citizens to participate. And you already have an empty seat, so if you add another one, you could really group St. Mary's Fall River DLD as one, and you could do Floyd Hill or Saddleback, because Floyd Hill's in Evergreen. But Saddleback, Blue Valley and Highway 103, and even spread that, split that, the rest of it.
So do you want to put together a couple of options?
We could, because he's got stuff already put into the
One of our action
CWP.
items would be drawing the map, and we need
Mhm.
somebody to take that on. It sounds like
It's easy to manipulate maps.
that's.
Yeah, we can make maps pretty simple.
Free to lean on Matt Taylor.
Yeah.
All I do is manipulate the map and I send Matt in a format and he uploads it. We have a pretty good relationship going that way.
Okay.
Outside of sort of board representation,
Mhm.
one of the things that's been in my mind that I'd like to see in the new IGA is some documentation of the goals that we share as a result of this conversation. I don't know if that means like a commitment to a goal of a minimum service level, you know, that looks something like this, you know, maybe with or without the numbers on it. A staffing level. I haven't thought much about what that is defined as, but I mean, what do people think about writing some of our shared goals into the IGA?
Are there other things in the IGA that are that specific? Or is that going to a specific place that the rest of it doesn't go? Like, does that belong in an IGA? I don't know. I know I've read this before, but not recently, so I'm not remembering exactly what I'm seeing, but
Your IGA contains an annual report that includes all of those things.
it shows.
Paragraph 40. Says there'll be an annual report that says the goals, objectives, the description of those goals, long-term, all those things are in what's required under the current agreement as an annual report.
And my question is, I'm aware of the reporting requirement, and my question is, like, we've adopted some pretty, like, we're on the verge of like having some goals that we paid a fair amount of money to understand and it put a lot of effort into understanding. And I think, I mean, Peter, your response probably is typically that wouldn't be in an IGA. I think this is a circumstance where I feel like we've put in enough effort and it's been tough enough to get here that while we're here, we might as well write it down.
Does it need to be as formal of documentation as an IGA or? could it
There are
be
some people that
report?
prefer to have a lot of recitals in documents and like the language of recitals.
Am I those some people?
Maybe you might be one of those
What
people.
about an
and-
exhibit?
I think that's all.
What an exhibit that have service expectations or
I
goals.
think that probably the more appropriate way as an exhibit. to-
So, but my question then is, and I realize their goals. And so because it's an agreement, if we don't meet those goals,
We're not meeting the goals in the existing IGA today.
so I'm saying, so are we taking them from goals to expectations that if we do not meet them, there's going to be some sort of remedy is the question. If you're just saying we aspire to, have various things, excellent staffing, excellent this and that, but there's no criteria, no evaluation, no enforcement, that's where I would say, what's the point? But I understand
I think the point is not to set up like a way for, like, let's not pretend that a jurisdiction is gonna have a better option to go it alone. This has never been the case. But maybe it could help settle some of these things. Like I'm remembering Andy saying, hey, is our fire station in there? Like, if we want to decide that it's a goal to have a new fire station in Idaho Springs and make sure it sticks, then we could write that into the IGA. Or if we want to decide that it's a goal to have
George,
6 additional firefighters
I
and 1
heard loud and
inspector.
clear that we don't want like the Title 32 pursuit to get in the way of deciding on these first. So I want to suggest that's a modification to continue exploring for an exhibit, but for the purposes of tonight's conversation, I think we need to.
I tend to agree with that. I think that we're trying to, we all want to reach from beyond the grave and make sure our children do what we want them to do after we're dead. I don't think. Sorry, I'm actually not thinking of you. I'm just thinking about the idea about the more specificity we put into this based on today's conversation and what I think today in this moment, what's the most individual important detail is probably too cumbersome to have in an IGA and expect to get total agreement. But we've all got to approach it with that attitude. Yeah.
Is that okay? Parking lot it?
We're in a parking lot.
Sorry.
Talking about Title 32 can start in September. Because all of this is gonna be done.
Yeah.
No, it's on the schedule.
Therefore.
We are
Okay.
good.
So the fire authority and the county are gonna put together kind of map options for the board. Any other action, and that's gonna be for the next meeting, for everybody to say, looks good, or we need to do this. But remember, we need this done by October 1st. Any other questions or info needed to move forward on that board representation modification?
This ties into the next item with funding. Do we want to have anything in the IGA about a goal of the ballot for increased funding? I don't know. I mean, we're trying to come together on agreement, about the short term where we're going.
Yeah.
I think, we know that we're in a precarious situation with funding.
Yeah.
No matter what, regardless, Title 42 is we know it's gonna take 1.5 years minimum. Do we want to set as a action item to go after a ballot measure next year or not?
Andy, it's a great question and it brings us into funding, so I'm just gonna keep going into the funding.
And the reason I brought it up right now is just because I don't know if that should be in the IGA or not. I mean, do we all agree to that? Because then we get to the same thing where we got to have our ballot wording done by the end of August next year. So we start backing up and building support for that, making our case. What are we going to be asking for? What are we communicating? So
And these two are tied. Because if you're working towards backing away from the funding cliff, and that might be to pursue a Title 32, you'll want to consider that, because imagine going to the ballot to get funding increases and then going to the ballot to change everything you worked on.
The Title 32 mill levy could be the same as what you decide on for
Okay,
backing away from the cliff.
so those could work in tandem.
Yeah.
Going to the ballot earlier could work in tandem and.
And then
still
your
support
district
excellence.
decides later on if they go for another increase.
Okay. But I heard that I put a new funding in place, a new funding agreement in place by January 2026, because that's something I heard from Jeremy in the beginning of this meeting. And what I'm hearing from Andy is if there's agreement to go to a ballot to back away from this funding cliff, you need the language in the agreement by August. So,
let me just clarify.
Yeah.
The current IGA does address all the millage issues and the contributions. So I see that as being something that needs to be decided by October in terms of if you want to address that and the funding as described in the IGA. If you want to then later explore, I agree, the Title 32 and everything like that, that's a separate discussion, but I would say that if you're intending to remain on the same funding mechanism, is that the plan? Because then you're not changing anything under the IGA. I think you need to address that, right? Maybe.
questions to the room.
I would just say that a Title 32 is not going to solve funding issues down the road. Because it's essentially the same thing. It's based on mill levy and assessed valuation. And they can do a sales tax, but
The question is, by October 1st, do you want to agree to different mills, or do you want to remain at the mills as agreed?
well, I'm just saying, keep the Title 32 out of that because it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I mean, I think the question that I have is like, for the municipalities can agree to pay a certain amount and fund it out of their general funds. County can't make that agreement. That agreement for the county would look like making a promise to get on the ballot. And so I think the question is like, are the municipalities interested in, and is the county willing to agree to place a measure on the ballot next year?
Well, I think Idaho Springs is.
That's a good question.
We got an upside down general fund right now. We got an upside down general fund right now. We're gonna go to the ballot to fund the fire service. That's gonna be given to somebody else, and then we still have an upside down general fund.
That's
To be clear.
Well, the fire authority was put together specifically in the very beginning to fund fire protection for the unincorporated area. It just happened that we then agreed to bring that in under the ESD for management, and it didn't work for 10 years. And then that changed into the fire authority, but so
So the county could have a public safety tax of up to 2%. So if you went to the voters and you asked for actually 2%,
That would be.
a portion of that would go towards the fire authority, but a portion of that can be used for, just so we're clear, other public safety providers of the county.
You said it couldn't go to the. Well, it can't go to Title 32, but it can go to the.
It can't go to a Title 32,
Got it,
but
okay.
we can divert as part of the public safety tax, part of the money
Okay.
to the fire authority.
That would also help
I don't think Dan
his impending shortfalls as his program grows, right?
could potentially address that, yes.
Something that should be discussed as part of this is.
do
But-
something about the sheriff's office.
Yes, and the sheriff's office needs, but that still doesn't affect a separate tax that, the county may be looking at just to continue functioning, that it will need just a general sales tax.
So with the public safety tax, it's gonna fund fire, ambulance, and the sheriff's office.
That would have.
It would be a portion, it would, yeah, it would be a portion of fire, it would be a portion of ambulance, because remember, ambulance still has its tax. And then it would go substantially to help probably the sheriff's office the most, which would relieve some pressure
Yes.
on the general fund, but not certainly.
Let me try to get this back on the rails a little bit. What you guys just heard is Brian reminding his board, we have a lot of priorities to balance. I still am interested to hear your answer to the question that I asked of whether you would like to see the county agree to get on the ballot.
I think they should.
And I don't know whether, I'm not making that offer. I don't know whether, if these two think I'm being silly.
I'm interested, like you, I'm interested in hearing what others say. You asked
Okay.
them what they thought about us getting on the
Okay.
ballot. I'm interested.
I'll start off. I mean, last year when we discussed the IGA and we came up with that increased mill levy amount. My belief was that the county was interested in going to that amount. It wasn't going to be just the municipalities that were going to get there and then wait for you to catch up.
So is that a yes?
It sounded to me like a yes. Yeah.
And I'm agreeing with Lynette. I just don't think there's any way we would ever get to where we needed without some type of agreed sales tax increase. So that's why I say I know when Empire said they didn't want to go above 9 mils, I felt with sales tax is the least painful of the options. As opposed to, running up, say, 20 more mills. So I would encourage the county, I would encourage all municipalities to go with some type of a sales tax increase. I just think that the visitors, you talk about equity, can help pay for a lot of these services they need when I-70 mishaps happen. And anyways, that's my 2 cents.
And it's kind of clear to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the county is the vehicle, the Board of County Commissioners, because if it's an ESD mill increase, that's us. And if it's a countywide sales tax, that's us. And we can't do a sales tax that doesn't include the municipalities. So like.
Yeah, what that is we'd all agree on what the overall increase to sales tax everywhere is. And then we would do it through the county. The city doesn't have to pass a new sales tax because we would be passing it when we pass the sales tax. Unless you pass your own sales tax and we pass some kind of a lesser sales tax. And that gets pretty complicated and messy.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd go there. I think we would, as a council, all of us on the council together in the tribe, come up with an amount that's the right amount. And then we agree this is what we're doing.
What questions do you need to answer to understand what that ballot would look like? The survey seems like something that would inform it. But
I don't think we're gonna get the survey back in September. I think what we need to do is decide the mechanism we want and the range that we think. A minimum and a maximum or something.
And now I'm realizing I should clarify, George, do you need a ballot in November?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Fine.
Just double checking.
No,
You
that's
said you wouldn't have the survey back in.
September. By October. If we need terms by October 1, I don't think
Yeah.
the survey is informing these terms.
No.
Well, is the term in the modified IGA that the county will determine a sales tax with the group based on survey?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think that should be a discussion after that survey comes.
Yeah.
I think it could be part of the intent, but the county can't commit to some of these things without board actually taking the formal action and then going to the voters. There's a lot of questions. So I think respectfully, what I would say to the group is setting aside that other aspect of things. If you intend to enter into a new IGA that begins in January, looking at the current terms that are in this, if you work within these current terms, is there a way to adjust it that benefit the funding aspect, at least in the short term, while you go through this?
ballot issue for the ESD to go to 9 would do that.
That's not where I'm leaning, but should this IGA contemplate what would happen if a sales tax ballot measure passes?
We
Right
could-
now, it contemplates what happens if we go to 9. It does not contemplate what happens if we pass a sales tax increase.
We could certainly put that in there, that if this happens, then such and such.
Maybe questions like, are we then expecting the municipalities to continue to fund at 9 mils, or are we allowing them to drop back down to 4.5? Maybe that's already in there. You guys could go down to 4.5 tomorrow, right?
I think, yes, we could. My interpretation wasn't that it was dictated that before the county got to that level, we were required to immediately leap to that level. It was, we would at least keep pace with what the county had. And we've actually gone beyond that. I don't really foresee us dropping back because
That would defeat the purpose.
yeah, backwards is a bad.
Yeah, and I don't see Idaho Springs going back either.
And Silver Plume already committed to mill levy. So
We're a few minutes over here. We have actions clarified for the board representation. Sounds like we need a little more clarity on how to back away from the cliff, specifically around what terms are reasonable and hold the group accountable. And we can get to the Title 32 pursuit, I think, in the meantime, would be my request. Before the next meeting, I think there's a lot of homework and coming for Claire. I know we've had minimal homework, I think, between meetings, but we're in crunch time.
You know, I think the Board of County Commissioners, to Peter's point, needs to have a conversation about what we can commit to in terms of funding inside of an IGA.
Yeah, this is, like all of this, it's a bit, I mean, you know, the drill, we've got a lot of challenges.
And every year we wait, some property taxing entity gets on the ballot. I love libraries, don't get me wrong. Do we have another meeting scheduled?
We do not.
yeah,
But we did have a second date that was in lieu of this one, if this one didn't work for our facilitators.
Yeah, it was like beginning of September.
I think it was.
I think it was the 20, I
Next week.
thought it was the 29th.
Yeah.
The tourism board meeting or tourism open house.
Do we want to give ourselves 3 meetings before the end of September?
3 meetings before the end of September.
I love you too.
What I would foresee in terms of the actual IGA is once the terms are determined, I would be drafting language, and then the plan would be to have probably 2 meetings with everybody where we can have it on the screen, the changes, and go through them incrementally. I don't think there's going to be a tremendous amount to update in the agreement, so we should be okay as far as that goes.
Is next, what week do we want to shoot for? Is next week out? Not too soon? The following week is a short week. It's
What about the 28th?
a holiday.
We have a commission meeting. Empire couldn't come.
That's gonna have to defer to
Dr. Cog Awards
Oh.
ceremony.
So next week's rough for Idaho Springs.
Where's the word?
Wednesday is at EPA Superfund Community Meeting. in Idaho Springs, 5 o'clock. Thursday, someone mentioned is that tourism event.
Mm-hmm.
Then Tuesday, we got an event.
Georgetown meets next Tuesday.
Number 5?
We're committed to you guys.
I was just promising this September.
27th.
Yeah.
Where we said the fifth.
26th.
We set a survey team meeting that day?
Oh, but that's earlier in the day.
Yes.
What about the fifth?
I mean, unless we decide to meet earlier in the day, I guess it's, did someone just say that? Maybe I apologize.
It's weird. I was,
Sorry,
September-
so we could meet earlier in the day, like late afternoon.
September 5?
Works.
What time?
September 5, at 5 o'clock, we have a community celebration for the Argo and Virginia Canyon Mountain Park.
didn't know. When does it end?
Was that?
When does it end? Is it an hour? Or is it?
It's 5 to 7. 5 to 7 right now,
Can we do it earlier that day?
but yeah.
I'm game.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
I'll be virtual.
What time is earlier?
I can't be up here until 4.
Can we do something earlier on the 4th?
I can't do the 4th. I don't have to be here though. I mean, you guys can soldier on without me, but
Wendy wouldn't be able to.
Fire Authority meets at 6 o'clock on the 4th.
3rd?
So now we're 3 weeks out if we can't. And we're into the second week of
What about the third?
September. And that gives us 3 weeks to get Peter the language.
What about the third?
3rd is I guess we can meet that night. It's a BOCC meeting day. We can meet that night.
Board meeting.
Oh, you got a board
Yeah,
meeting.
we got a board.
Oh. What about Monday, second?
It's a holiday.
Yeah, it's Labor Day.
You can go.
And I know you guys don't work on Fridays, but could we do Friday?
Yeah, Fridays work.
Possibility.
Not my ideal way, as much as I love you guys, but yeah, I mean,
It's a work day for us, so I'm open.
Yeah, I could go.
You mean the sixth? Or?
Yeah, the
What about the
sixth.
30th?
About the 30, yeah.
Or go, yeah. Good for me.
Not good for the
For
life.
reference, Jonathan nor I can be here next week.
Okay,
6th.
September 6th.
sixth. Okay,
Did I hear that the 2nd is out? Did somebody say Monday the 2nd is out?
is Labor Day.
Labor
It's
Day.
Labor Day, okay. All right, Rick and I are the only ones that want to work.
Go for it.
September 6th,
Okay.
6 PM?
I mean, it could be.
Just kidding.
How about a breakfast meeting?
Breakfast meeting?
Just so you know, I wouldn't be able to be here until 10 o'clock.
the 6th, I have a.
It's brunch.
9:30 until 12 on 6th in the morning. I'll be attending virtually also.
1 to 3, or is it a lunch meeting?
Which day? 6.
Works for me.
We're good?
What time?
1 to
Alright.
3.
What time?
1
1
to
to
3.
3?
Well, that's fine with, no, I'm fine. I get just, because we have Fridays off, I like to schedule the doctor's appointments on those days. And then you guys, and do this, so.
So do you have an appointment scheduled?
Yeah, but it's at 7:40, so I should be able to be out of there, I'm sure, in plenty of time, but I wanted to say 10, just
We're
to
talking
be
about
safe.
1 to 2.
1.
That, oh, yeah, I already said that's totally fine with me.
Is 2 hours enough time?
What? No.
Because we were increasing it to 2.5 hours.
1 to 3:30?
Okay.
Works for Jonathan.
Yes.
She said with a big grin.
I will be in Durango.
Okay.
That's
1 to 3:30 on Friday, September 6th.
You can't be here on the 6th?
On the Rigby maybe.
I can be here. I could be here later, but it's Friday.
Long as one of you can be.
Yeah.
And don't worry, I'll give you guys plenty of homework in the interim.
Yes, please.
So 1 to 3.
Great, great.
Yeah.
The homework is
Going
ridiculous.
camping that weekend. And I will stay.
He's like, check in and leave.
Right.
Nice.
This is no lunch, huh?
Right.
Huh?
No lunch, no, 1 o'clock.
No food. A big thank you to the county for the spread. That was
It's really
excellent.
good. Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was delicious.
Whomever, thank you very much.
That compliment. Let's end on that note. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.